In this episode of Stories from Maine, we take a look back at Percy L. Spencer, a man who made his own luck. His unstoppable curiosity and yearning for education led him to invent one of the greatest and most popular kitchen appliances in the history of human evolution. And this man was from Howland, Maine.
Percy LeBaron Spencer was born in Howland, Maine, on July 9th of 1894. He was one of two sons, born to Jasper and Myrtle Spencer. By January 8th of 1896, Jasper had died at the young age of 26, and his 20-year-old widow, Myrtle, had to farm her young children out to be cared for. 2-year-old Percy was handed over to his uncle, John Spencer, and his wife, Minnie, to be raised at Enfield, Maine. For a time, Percy attended the local schools. But in 1901, at the age of 7, his uncle John had died, and Percy's life would once again change. Percy soon had to leave school and go to work in John McGregor's South Lincoln spool mill and at other odd jobs in order to support himself and his Aunt Minnie. It was in McGregor's mill, as electrification came to Enfield and Howland and the surrounding towns, that Percy began to learn about electricity by working with those men who were installing the new power systems. Percy's curiosity and marvel was sparked by the innovation of electricity, and from this spark, Percy would enjoy a lifelong love of learning. When Percy turned 18 years old, the famed RMS Titanic disaster had captured the saddened hearts, and bold headlines spread across the world over its horrific loss of life. The famed stories of the heroism of the Marconi wireless radio operators and their pleas for help had inspired young Percy to learn wireless technology. By July of 1912, Percy joined the United States Navy, and he availed himself of the free training and the vast libraries available to him on board his ship, the USS Dixie. When not on board, he also perused those books that were available to him in the libraries of the naval bases where he served. Percy began studying electricity, science, and advanced mathematics, and he read anything he could get his hands upon. He read voraciously, and he undertook every chance to learn anything the Navy was willing to teach him. Over the next few years, Percy would enjoy a good job with steady pay, and he earned the equivalent of a college education. Moreover, Percy had become a Navy-certified expert in radio and electric technology. Percy was honorably discharged in 1914, and he quickly took a job with the Wireless Specialty Apparatus Company, located in Boston, Massachusetts, where he continued to learn and to earn. He soon settled in Newton, Massachusetts, where he met and married Louise Larson in about 1920. Together they had 3 sons, John, James, and George Spencer. By 1925, Percy's older brother, John Albee Spencer, was also living in Massachusetts, and he urged his younger brother to come work with him at a small 3-year-old electronics manufacturer at Cambridge, Massachusetts. There, Percy would spend the rest of his working life at the company that came to be known as Raytheon. And it was there that Percy Spencer would eventually make history and change the world. Before Raytheon, Percy's older brother, John Spencer, had worked at the American Radio and Research Corporation, AMRAD, where he had also become a notable inventor. There at AMRAD, John developed an electrical circuit disruptor, which activated if an electrical device overheated and reached a certain temperature. The device was named the Spencer Disk Device and later came to be known as the Spencer Thermostat. However, the patent became the property of AMRAD's manager, Vannevar Bush, who purchased the patent from AMRAD and then helped to start the Spencer Thermostat Company. Although the device was John's invention, he earned little to no money for his inventiveness. Spencer Thermostat Company went on to make millions of dollars from the device. However, Vannevar Bush went on in 1922 to found the Raytheon Corporation, where both the Spencer boys would continue to work for Bush. And it would be there at Raytheon where Percy Spencer would make United States history and change the world. At Raytheon, Percy worked on many different projects, mostly having to do with radio and radar parts manufacturing and development. When World War II broke out in December of 1941, Percy's workload was doubled. Radar technology was in its infancy, and Percy's work on different types of electronic tubes to operate these systems became significant. Percy's work created the cavity magnetron, which became the main component of air and surface radar. His work also improved undersea sonar for the detection of German submarines. Additionally, his work on reusable, longer-lasting vacuum tubes for electronic devices had greatly increased the efficiency of those devices. Percy also developed a faster way to mass manufacture these components, so that radar and sonar could be quickly produced in numbers large enough to feed the voracious needs of both the American and British navies. By 1945, while operating a radar magnetron in the Raytheon laboratory, a candy bar that Percy had in his pocket began to melt, and he realized that his close proximity to the magnetron was responsible. Putting two and two together, he began to experiment with food. Water was boiled, an egg was cooked, and the first microwave popcorn was popped in the Raytheon lab. On October 8th of 1945, Spencer and Raytheon applied for a patent, and the microwave oven was first marketed to the world by 1947 as the Raytheon radar range. Raytheon then paid Spencer $2 for the patent on his radar range invention. These first behemoth machines stood nearly 6 feet tall and weighed close to 750 pounds. And the cost of this commercial radar range equaled the average annual income in America of just $3,000. The first residential radar ranges came out in 1955 for half the price of the commercial model. In 1953, Percy's older brother John had died at the age of 61. Sadly, little is known as to what contributions John may have made to the invention of radar, sonar, or the radar range. John Albee Spencer was buried at Newton Cemetery in Newton, Massachusetts. 3 years later, in 1956, Percy's wife Louise had also died. 4 years later, in 1960, Percy met and married Lillian Oppenheimer. He was now a senior vice president at Raytheon, and his radar range was still a work in progress. It was still overpriced and far too large for the average homeowner. By 1964, a 70-year-old Percy Spencer retired as a senior vice president and senior member of the board of directors of Raytheon. 3 years later, in 1967, a smaller version of the magnetron made the radar range a much more compact appliance for home use, and Raytheon's Amana radar range was born and made available at a more affordable cost of just under $500. In 1951, Percy's wartime efforts at Raytheon were acknowledged, and he was awarded the United States Navy's Distinguished Public Service Award, which is the United States Navy's highest civilian award, for his wartime contributions to radar and sonar technology. He had received more than 108 patents in his lifetime, and Percy was inducted into the National Kitchen and Bath Association Hall of Fame in 1995. Then in 1999, he was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Percy also became a fellow in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And for the man with little formal education, Percy Spencer was honored by the University of Massachusetts with an honorary doctorate in science. The man who began his life with so little education had applied himself for the rest of his life and climbed up the ladder of learning and success. Today, Percy Spencer is recognized as a true American physicist. Percy LeBaron Spencer died at the age of 76 on September 8th of 1970 at Newton in Massachusetts. Percy is interred at the Newton Cemetery in Newton, Massachusetts, with both wives, Louise and Lillian, and is not far from his brother John. John's thermostat technology was the precursor to today's circuit breakers and thermostatic technology. The Spencer thermostat is still manufactured today, and the radar technology developed in those early days at Raytheon can still be found in military and commercial ships and civilian boats worldwide. Today, Percy's microwave oven can be found in nearly every kitchen, both residential and commercial. These modern-day radar ranges are the result of one man's unstoppable curiosity, and his hard work and determination had revolutionized two wartime navies to help defeat Nazi Germany and win the Second World War. Both John and Percy had created some of the greatest inventions in human history and brought them into the lives of hundreds of millions of people worldwide. In the end, the Spencers of Howland gave the world two sons of Maine who would go on to change the world with their inventions. And to think, it all began with a candy bar. So, the next time you reset your circuit breakers, go out in your boat, turn up your heat, or make popcorn, remember these two brothers from Howland, Maine, who were amongst the most inventive and legendary of our stories from Maine.
Stories from Maine is a collection of true tales and legendary stories of daring, heroism, absurdity, disaster, and spectacle, all proving why many of the greatest legends in American history are our stories from Maine.